By the power of Grayskull, go and collect some He-Man figures. All right, so I'm Jesse here with my bro Dan. We're excited to review the new Masters of the Universe movie out in theaters right now. Let's get right into it, and we'll share our kind of like general review. No spoilers at this point. We're just going to give you our honest opinion about what we think. And also we're two people, who grew up in that era of He-Man, and we collected the toys. We watched the cartoon. We watched the first live action movie. So we're coming to this with a lot of kind of sentimental love for He-Man. So getting right into this, the premise of this movie really takes a nod from like Flash Gordon and John Carter of Mars, where you have an origin story that in the first act begins on Earth. So we have a young Prince Adam being portaled to Earth after Skeletor viciously attacks the kingdom of Eternia. He's portaled to Earth and then lives there for like 15 years as an HR, like customer service guy or an HR rep. So he works in human services, human resources. So it's kind of played up for laughs in that first act. The juxtaposition of He-Man in HR position. He's also lost his magic sword that was portaled to Earth as well. And they also play that up for laughs too, that he's searching for this lost phallic symbol. Then he finds his way back to Eternia to hopefully stop Skeletor and his evil minions. So this movie has a sprawling cast of characters and creatures. We start out, of course, with He-Man and Prince Adam, played by Nicholas Galitzine, Camila Mendes as Tila, Idris Elba as Man-at-Arms, Kristen Wiig coming in as the voice of Roboto, Tom Wilton as the voice of Cringer / Battlecat, Marina Baccarin as the Sorceress, James Purefoy as King Randor, He-Man's father, Charlotte Riley as Queen Marlena, He-Man's mom, John Zuzang as Ram Man, and then Johannes Johannesson as Fisto. And those are the good guys here. Those are the heroes of the film. For the villains, we have Jared Leto as Skeletor, Alison Brie as Evelyn, Sam C. Wilson as Trapjaw, Kojo Ata as Tricops, and Gary Martin as the voice of Beastman. So, Dan, like the question, I guess, first of all, I want to get into is, do you think this movie will introduce a new generation to He-Man? Or do you think it's a kind of film that is riding on nostalgia and 80s nostalgia? Is there anything for like a new generation? Do you think that they will get into this? Or is it just like us 30s and 40-year-olds who grew up in the 80s that would really appreciate this movie?
Well, based on early box office returns, I think that the news headlines about box office returns this weekend projected the film to make about somewhere in the area of 30 million. Based on that first weekend forecast, I'd say that this is mainly a nostalgia trip. This film is not drawing, at least in the first weekend, not drawing new fans to it. It's going to be drawing, the people like us who grew up with the product, have fond memories of the Masters of the Universe toy line, and maybe perhaps more clouded memories of the movie, but certainly are here for a new big glitzy adaptation that actually has the kind of contemporary special effects that can finally accommodate the franchise. I think that speaking on a purely personal level, I think that's the major appeal of this film, is that this is the film that should have been made, but the money wasn't there, and more importantly, the technology wasn't there. The technology had not progressed to the point where special effects could equate these characters, equate the world of Eternia. And we're finally there, right? We're finally at a point where actually they can give us a film that looks like the franchise, an Eternia that actually looks like the Eternia of our imaginations, And I think one of the most exciting things for me was to be watching this film and see characters that actually look like their original animated and toy line selves, right? Trapjaw looks like Trapjaw. Beastman looks like Beastman. Skeletor looks like Skeletor, right? I mean, there's, it's not an equation. It's no longer trying to equate based on limited, special effects, what these, the closest thing that they can get to, right? They actually have the technology to make Skeletor really look like Skeletor, and he does. He looks like Skeletor.
Yeah.
And then of course Nicholas Galitzine or Galitzine looks like He-Man. I mean, they've got that. It's no longer. This is one of the things I actually didn't get about the original film. Right? Why not just have the classic He-Man plate? Right? That wasn't really what Dolph Lundgren was wearing. But now we actually finally get that costume, and that's an aesthetic choice, right? That's no longer a technological limitation. It's just something that the original filmmakers didn't go with, and it was great to see villains and actually members of both the heroes and the villains that looked like they're supposed to look from a nostalgic perspective. But also, you had villains that were actually real characters from the toy line, right? You didn't have these replacement characters like you did in the original film. Although they did shout out to the original film, I noticed that I think it's Karg, the weird bat work creature, actually does appear in this film. He actually is one of the villains, although he's not one of the featured villains. He's just kind of a side piece, so to speak. And then it just and Evelyn. I love Meg Foster as Evelyn in the original film. I think she's a better Evelyn than Alison Brie, but Alison Brie's fun, and Alison Brie, the costume and everything looks more like the Evelyn, right, from the toy line, and it really works for me on that level. And I have a really positive reaction to that, where they just leaned into the look. This is what these characters are supposed to look like. This is what Eternia is supposed to look like. And a film about He-Man is supposed to take place on Eternia, on his home planet. And so like one of the things I love the most about the film is that we spend very little time on Earth. We don't spend the whole film trying to get back to Eternia like we do in the original film. It's the inverse of the original film, where you start on Eternia, it goes to Earth and just stays there pretty much until the end. Here you actually get Eternia, and it's a real world, man. It really works.
Yeah, I agree. I think having cartoon accurate characters, it was obviously missing from the first live action film, and that's a joy for the fans to see that. And let's get into the cast of the characters here, starting with Prince Adam. This movie is like an origin story for the character, how he became He-Man. Like, I don't know if you saw Barbie, but it has the kind of same kind. You did, yeah. It has the same kind of, like, I don't know if you had the same reaction, but I felt it had the same kind of meta take on the character that, like, when Prince Adam goes to Earth, he's searching for his sword, and he ends up finding it in like a collectible toy store, toy shop for like adult, aging adult collectors, vintage like adult collectible toys. So there's a nod to the toys there, right there. You'll have meta moments within the movie, and the whole premise of like Prince Adam turning into this like over the top beefcake, like, I think the whole premise of that they wanted to play around with, and so that's why they have him start as a HR assistant. The juxtaposition and comedic disparity of seeing him stuck in HR. That first act very much leans into the Office Space comedy at times, and plays that up. What did you think of all that?
Well, I think one of the things that was most interesting about this film, and maybe I think one of the things that I often find myself frustrated with, is that this film, because it was made or has been made in the context in which it has been made, in the era of the 24-hour news cycle, the culture wars, identity politics, debates about toxic masculinity and the patriarchy, and all these other kind of like hot button political issues, right? The film can't really ignore those issues. It certainly can't do what the conceit of other films in an older era used to do, which is kind of pretend that those current events just don't exist, or if they do exist, they exist, and the film exists in this kind of like cone of silence or this echo chamber, right, where they're just outside but not intruding. And so I think that it's interesting the He-Man that we see when he's not He-Man, when he's just little Adam stuck in Earth, that really invokes what more conservative members of this debate call the crisis of masculinity, right? This big, muscly guy, Adam, doesn't know where he belongs in this world and doesn't really feel he belongs in this world of Earth. He can't, he just seems crazy and awkward to everybody. He's good at his job, but not really good. His dates think he's crazy. He can't get a date. So there's all sorts of ways in which that invokes the concerns and the anxieties we're experiencing over masculinity, specifically over men and boys, and what space or spaces they can or should occupy, and what it means to be a man, and what is masculinity inherently toxic, right? Is there a masculinity that isn't toxic? A traditional heterosexual masculinity that isn't toxic? And so the film is really kind of like placing itself in implicit dialogue with some of these questions. And one of the things I find frustrating is that as a result, I feel like that kind of clouds what this film really is, which is just kind of a big, silly romp. I don't think a film like this can really address those questions in a meaningful way. And I don't think this film addresses those questions. Eventually, I don't think this film addresses those questions in a meaningful way. Although it does provide some partial answers, which I think are interesting. So I found that kind of a combination of interesting but also frustrating because, quite frankly, it's not why I'm going to this film. I'm going to this film because I want a big, silly, campy adventure. That sounds very reductive, right? Really, this is just a cranky old man moment where I'm frustrated by the historical time and place that I occupy, and I'm frustrated that the historical time and place that I occupy is interfering with what really should just be a fun fantasy romp, and yet really can't quite bring itself to be that.
I think this film, coming with at a time and an era where, like you said, there are like cultural wars. You have the manosphere, this toxic masculine space, and so coming out with a film that is has at its very center a powerful, strong man. I think this film is at times apologizing for that premise. And so that's why I think, and I don't know if this is your, what's behind what you're saying. It's my reaction to the themes of how it explores the themes is that it's simplistic. I mean, it feels more like an apology for the premise rather than, an engaging exploration of that premise. Like, because I feel like your takeaway would be different if it was actually bringing something to the table.
I will say this about the script of this film. I think that one of its real faults is that the writers are too keen to let us know that they get it, right? Well, no, you're missing the point, right? So a maniacal villain laugh, for instance, is one of the classic campy things, a maniacal villain laugh. You can do that. You can have a maniacal villain laugh all by itself, and you don't need to comment on it. So Jesse, you remember there's this Monty Python sketch where John Cleese is playing one of these pompous bureaucratic characters. The sketch will cut away to John Cleese when he thinks there's been a moment made. It'll cut away to him, and he'll be like,
yeah.
Though, and the joke, of course, is that's a perfect way to ruin a joke or ruin a story, right? Is that you have the writer cutting in and be like, and I feel like that's what happens in this film. Without spoiling too much, the writers so often don't just let us have the maniacal laugh, right? Because again, that's a focal point of ambiguity. It's funny, right? It can be funny. You can laugh at a villain having this maniacal laugh moment. But you can also think it's cool and epic. You can also invest in it. You can't do that if the writers intrude and say, no, this is a campy moment. See, camp, don't take it seriously. Don't take it seriously. Well, no, you have to give people that ambiguous space to make their own choice about the relationship they have to the text. And there are so many instances in this film where the writers don't give us that option. They don't give us that freedom.
Yeah, I think the prime example of that is the character's name origins. It turns out, I mean,
Mm.
Prince Adam, as a geek boy on Earth, ends up naming all the principal characters like Ram Man, Fisto. They didn't originally have those names, and part of me is like, okay, run with the cartoon world, just give them the name and run with it, and and leave it there. I
No,
mean, I
yeah.
think, yeah, and I will say like when
Stop
the
apologizing for the product.
yeah, yeah. But what there there are some moments where I did like laugh, and one of them where the joke I thought was really good. The in joke is when of course, He-Man, Prince Adam has this whole origin story, and there's a moment where he is with Tila and asks him, like, why is Skeletor the way he is? Why is he doing this? And she just simply says, well, he's like bad. That's why. And he's like, well, there must be something more to it. And she says, and her response is, well, he has a skull for a face. And that made me laugh. I loved that moment. That was like the best joke. And I love, like, okay, let's keep it moving. Like, we don't, I mean, he has a skull for a face. He's evil. Obviously, we don't need to get into a complex origin story for him. Let's keep it moving, And that felt very much true to the cartoon world.
Mm.
Yeah. I mean, I don't
Well,
know if that worked for you.
well, I think it does work, but it also goes to the heart of one of the things that I think is problematic about the way we don't acknowledge just how complex and multi-layered art is all by itself, whether or not we add an ironic undertone to it explicitly, right? And that is that that moment was really interesting to me, and moments like that. I mean, and this whole question of trying to be diplomatic, and He-Man comes from an HR background, right? Um, in the real world, one of the lessons you learn from history that there are people out there who, for practical purposes, are just bad. I mean, you think you're going to negotiate with Hitler? You think you're going to work something out with Mussolini? You think Stalin is going to stop his purges because you asked him real nice and told him that he's valued and loved? I mean, get real. And it's not, and there's nothing more to it than that. It's like there's got to be something more to it. No, there's not. He wants power. I think one of the reasons I've spoken so strongly about what bothers me about this film is that the things that are going right in this film are going so right. The transformation scene for He-Man is epic. It's awesome. It's every bit that weird, campy moment that I crave. I mean, without going into spoiler territory, I mean, go see the film. It's not only like it is in the comics, it's like amped up. It's like even more intense, but done in a way that I think honors the weird, campy, outrageous spirit of the source material. Right? It looks great. I love the transformation. And like I said, I love the way this film looks. And I love the way the
Yeah.
characters look. The costumes are amazing. I think this film makes really smart use of special effects, too. It's not just a CGI romp. They've got real sets. They've got
Right.
sets that look fantastic. The interiors of Castle Grayskull look amazing. The sets look amazing.
Yeah.
I think this film looks fantastic. It just looks so damn good. It really does. And I love
Practical
the He-Man
creatures, too.
transformation. Practical
Yeah, we got.
creatures. There's a fair amount of CGI. The Beast Man is clearly a CGI creation, but I feel like
Sure.
they're basing it on real movement. I don't know if it's actually motion capture, but he looks great when we see Beast Man. I wish we saw more of Beast Man.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
that was the Beastman effects were really cool. I mean, I'm not
that
a
was awesome. It was
huge fan of
amazing. Yeah, it's worth
CJ.
going to see it just for the Beast Man, and I love the way Trapjaw looks. And I even love the way Evelyn looks. Her character seems like the most grounded in appearance in a lot of ways. But yeah, they
Yeah.
all look fantastic. I love Idris Elba looks like Man at Arms, right? He's got the helmet, he's got the chest plate. It's
Yeah.
awesome. They understood the brief when they
Yeah.
designed these characters.
For me, the character who steals the show is Skeletor. Just like in the 1987 film, Franco Langella's Skeletor was the main highlight. I mean, for
Mm.
me personally, I would say that the Skeletor is pretty damn good. I mean, and that's coming from someone who's not always enjoyed Jared Leto's take on villains. Like, I was not a huge fan of his Joker. I mean, it's my least favorite Joker, but I thought the He-Man world and universe really fit his like weird, eccentric, exaggerated, over the top acting style. He doesn't have to rein himself in; he just can go for it, And so I thought
Right.
if we're talking about the camp factor and a character and performance who are really embracing that, like he does, and in every scene. And so when he's on, like, I mean, he's putting all the attention on himself. Like I loved all his scenes for the most part. Yeah.
Yeah, that's going to be a controversial one. I was listening to another podcaster's perspective, and she hated Leto,
Oh,
um,
really?
and really didn't like the film at all. Um, so yeah, it's going to be polarizing. I personally really loved it. I think Leto's performance in this film is often soured by the writing, by the choices that the writers make about, you know not letting the camp and not letting the schmaltzy storyline just have free reign.
Right.
But that's not on Leto. That's on the writing. I think, yeah. You talk about camp, by the way. I mean, Leto almost plays Skeletor as this windy old queen, right?
Oh, yeah.
He definitely codes
Oh,
queer to
yeah.
me in a way.
Totally.
Yeah,
Totally.
I guess I'm bothered by the frame story. I'd prefer there be no mention of Earth at all. That it just be pure Eternia. And
Yeah.
and also, does He-Man even need an origin story? He's not like Superman, right? Does he ever have an origin story in the series? He probably does, but really, he just gets the sword and he's He-Man.
Yeah, like in terms of like his secret life, like on a they bring that conflict more into his Earth storyline. He's in HR, he's in this like bureaucratic, prison of you know routines and minimum wage, and I think they brought that in to make him a relatable character. I mean, I think maybe it does to a certain degree, but that his secret life is his fantasy world. When he's drawing, when he's he spends his work time at work looking up, trying to find out where his sword is. So he's looking up toy shops and looking up toys, and people just see this character who is like completely in his own fantasy world, like in a toy land, a toy world. And I think like that speaks to like, probably like a lot of the He-Man fans out there who, yeah, we're all working 9 to 5s, which we probably, would rather be doing something else. And we reconnect with, our joy and our creativity when we find ourselves back into that kids universe of cartoons and toys. And so I think it was speaking to that's the hidden secret life, that he's finding his way back to. And there's that meta element where it's speaking to the fan base as well, and but
Yeah.
in terms of like being a character in that reading of He-Man being in the closet, of course that's not there at all in this movie. So
Yeah.
Nicholas Galitzine is really good as Prince Adam, and he's a good He-Man as well. I think what lets those actors down and the characters down somewhat is the writing and the script for the movie.
Yeah, I think I'm 100% in agreement with you. I think the look of the film is fantastic. I think the casting is great. I think that everyone does a great job. Leto as Skeletor. I think that in terms of writing, I think that character is a really, for me, a more or less successful blending of the kind of bumbling, silly Skeletor from the cartoons, and the more threatening Shakespearean Skeletor that we get from Frank Langella in the movie, right? So there's a nice blend of those two kind of like disparate elements. And I think it's pretty successful. I think Skeletor is a highlight for me. I think he's a lot of fun. I think Leto plays him very well. But everyone does a
Yeah.
really good job. I love the costumes. I love the look. Like you said, I think the battle scenes are sensational. I think the battle scenes are really exciting. It's so refreshing. I don't think I emphasize this enough. It's so refreshing when battle scenes are intense and exciting, but I can still tell what's going on. I can still see the action. I still have a clear sense of where everyone is, where He-Man is, what he's doing. It's cool. It's really cool. it's unironically cool, those action scenes, you know. I've got to emphasize that nothing ironically cool about those action scenes. They're just cool. The film lets us have that at least. And then, yeah, I mean, I take issue with the writing. I take issue with especially the frame story. I don't think we needed Earth at all. Um, I don't think we needed that frame story at all. You know, relatively little time was spent on He-Man's origin story, but I could have done with even less. I don't think He-Man needs a great big origin story. I think he's kind of speaks for himself as this mythic figure. And we have, I think there should have been done with the dual identity with Adam and He-Man. That's one of the major, you know, uh, motifs of the original series. I don't see why they couldn't have played around with that a little bit more. I think there was something about that
Yeah.
that maybe they were too anxious to play around with. I don't know. Whatever it was, they didn't do it. So that's kind of a negative for me. But this film has enough going right for me to definitely recommend that you go see it.
What's your final rating then? Like out of 5 stars, what do you give
Well,
this
you
one?
know, I'm old and cranky. I spent a lot of this podcast complaining about the film, but this film is a solid 3-star film for me. There's enough going right here for me to just give this film 3 stars. This is a fun Friday night. I wish I could say this is a film you could go take your 10-year-olds to see. I don't think it is. I think it's too violent, but it looks great. It's enough of a nostalgia romp to warrant your money. The actors are terrific. The battle scenes are terrific. It's an exciting film. Great action sequences. I think Leto is a really pleasant surprise as Skeletor. I had a lot of fun with him. He had a lot of fun with the character. Clearly, I wish the writing were better. I wish they'd made different choices with the writing and with the setup. But I do hope that this film is successful enough to give the writers another crack at this material to see what they do with it in the sequel, because it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah. I think I would rate it slightly higher than you at 3.5 stars, and that's mainly because I thought like I was really satisfied with the cast and the characters, and very much was like on not pins and needles, but like very much like wondering like are they gonna just completely misfire with Skeletor, because like that's gonna break this movie for me if they don't at least get
Mm-hmm.
Skeletor right. And I thought they
Right.
got Skeletor right. Yeah, like in contrast to Frank Langella's portrayal, uh Skeletor was more silly and brought more of a comedic element, and Leto really leans into that, and he takes that directly from the cartoon character, and he has that maniacal laugh, which Langella didn't laugh at all in his portrayal. So I like that he brought that over the topness and ridiculousness to the character, but also made him threatening and scary.
But again, I think overall a really promising first entry, and Jesse and I both hope it's not just a first entry. I do hope we see more.
Yeah, I'm definitely down to see where they take the characters in the world, this Masters of the Universe world further. So that'd be pretty cool. So, all right, well, yeah, those are our thoughts and reflections on Masters of the Universe. Yeah, let us know if you grew up with these characters, this toy line, this cartoon. If are you coming to Masters new? You don't know anything about it. And if you've seen it, just share your perspective in the comments. We would love to engage you and your thoughts and opinions about the movie. And yeah, these are our thoughts and opinions. And we're not speaking for everyone, obviously. This is our own response to the movie, and yeah, I think overall we recommend it, and yeah, in some ways it was better than I expected. So don't forget to like and subscribe for more movie reviews and deep takes, especially in the genres of sci-fi, fantasy, and horror. Those are the ones we love to dabble in. All right, so be well, and we'll see you next time in the next review.